Mark Wagman, Bill Wise, you guys introduce yourselves.
Sure. I'm Mark Wagman. A lot of people in this world call me Wags. You've heard that name, not the billions guy. I'm a nice guy, I promise. I'm a managing director at Medialink. We're a boutique consultancy in the space. I'm sure you've heard of us. If not, we're the management consulting world of the advertising, media, marketing ecosystem. Great to be here.
It's funny, I've known Wags for like 10 years, and I actually just recently learned his first name.
There you go.
Hi, Bill Wise. I am co-founder and CEO of Mediaocean, and really excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming today. So some of the little background on a few things. Bill, you've been making a lot of really exciting bold moves over at Mediaocean, acquiring Flash Talking, and recently Innovid. Can you tell us a little about your vision to build the ad tech company of the future?
Yeah, thanks. So I think a lot of people, when they think of Mediaocean, think of the agency system that does a lot of the back office work, and in large part that is our core business, and that's where we came from. But a few years ago, when we looked at the ecosystem, we just said there's this supply chain that's incredibly messy. It's complex, and mostly it's costly. And so we started saying, hey, as a starting point where every buyer at every major agency puts in all of their buys from TV to TikTok, how can we make it more efficient for them? And so we started interoperating to that messy supply chain. And then we said, at our level of scale, rather than partner, maybe we should start building or buying, other solutions. And so we wanted to maintain neutrality. And so we started with ad serving, and then we went into creative, and then we went into brand safety and verification, and then most recently with Innovid, we got kind of completed it to CTV. What's interesting is, while we are focused on the demand side of the business, the beneficiaries are publishers. Because as we help make a more efficient supply chain, that just results in better yield. And so the most interesting story is, I was at Possible last week, which was a shit show for everyone. Since we're not filming, I can say something. It was a shit show. But I actually, half my meetings were with publishers who are saying, hey, I love what you're building. Can we connect directly? And so just yesterday, we got a contract from Disney. And it's kind of like the first time we're getting the sell side saying, hey, for direct IO, for programmatic direct, why am I paying all these DSPs and SSPs? Can I integrate directly to you? And we said, yes. And so that's going to be a big focus for us. And at the end of the day, we also think the world needs an independent ad tech company at scale. Because as marketers lean in and are making technology and data decisions in-house, they don't want to work with 300 companies. They want to work with 12. And they prefer them not to be Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Are there any of them here? No. Okay. Man, I didn't say anything here.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Bill. Wags,
Yeah.
you sit at an interesting intersection across the industry with a pretty panoramic view of a lot of things going on. What do you see in that's exciting you?
Oh man. I'm a sucker for a food analogy, but I can't think of a good one. This industry is just a pendulum that swings back and forth, right? And I think what is first and foremost front and center today was what we were talking about 3 years ago at some point. I think a couple things. I think I do a lot with AI and automation and helping publishers and others think about the right ways to use it, which we could talk for days about, but that's an area certainly in the automation side where if you're a media seller today, you want to put your greatest people in market having conversations with clients like Disney, not sitting at the kitchen table filling out spreadsheets and pivot tables and trying to reserve inventory and play that game, which obviously resonates with this crew, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but god damn it, if we could solve that problem for everybody, the amount of money that could be unlocked, and we could have that conversation. So that's one. I think measurement is always a thing that we at Medialink are in the middle of in some way, shape, or form. I think more money in this ecosystem right now than any of you in this room would even admit is going into the creator influencer space, which is the wild, wild west in a lot of cases with respect to measurement, which is a whole other set of problems. And then, what the hell's going to happen in the back half of this year from a financial perspective, which nobody knows. And we're working with the various levels of marketers across the board, some who have 80% of their products right now, sitting in a dock somewhere across the globe, and others who are thinking about maybe now's the time to actually double down and move all the Q4 spend into Q2 and just pump it in and see if you can like hop a category leader here or there. So it's a nutty time, yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, let's talk about something really nutty. So the Department of Justice,
There you go.
finally found Google guilty of being a monopoly. So like hot take, Bill, so are they going to break it up? What do you think the parts are? Because there's a lot of publishers in the room who work with GAM and AdX, and everybody wondered what's this all mean?
So, 3 weeks ago, I think I did a podcast where they asked me, I said, listen, these things, I went through DOJ personally when we merged to form Mediaocean. And I said, with the amount of lawyers that Google has, like, they're gonna appeal, that appeal's gonna take years. So 3 weeks ago, I said, hey, listen, nothing's gonna change, nothing's gonna happen. I actually think something's gonna happen. Like, because now they're saying, hey, you gotta break up, GAM and AdX, and while you're figuring that out, you have to create APIs, you have to, so they're, like, the remedies are going to force action. And so I'm kind of like really impressed with how the government went about this. And now listen, we all know there's some intricacies that nobody unless you're in the industry can get. And I think, sometimes like, on the other side, they also were found to be an anomaly on the search side. So it's like, get rid of the Chrome. The browser business is a terrible business to be in unless you own search, right? Or maybe AI, right? So, what, they're gonna sell Chrome to what? OpenAI, and then, then OpenAI is going to be standard. So I think, we all in the industry need to think of, what are the other things that are going to cause this, right? Like, what are going to be the cause and effect of some of these things? But yeah, I actually think they're either going to get broken up or they're going to be forced to be more open, and I think that's good for the industry. Yeah. And by the way, I'm a buyer of GAM if they're selling it.
No, I agree with everything Bill said. I think the question for me is, do they get away with creating another portfolio company under Alphabet, kind of hiding the breakup in some way, shape, or form? Or are they going to really try to sell this thing? I think to tie this into the cookieless future bullshit that we all wasted way too much time on. It proved, right? Like the blog post before the last blog post coming out of Google was. Coming out of Google, sounds like my father. Coming out of Google was, listen, we're not going to deprecate cookies, but we're going to move a lot of the UI front and center to allow consumers to opt in or opt out, right? And now they've backtracked on that, which shows you that, hey, they're trying to distance themselves from their control over Chrome, right? Like, the more they do that, the more they control that ecosystem, the more they're making the Justice Department's case that they've got this monopoly up and down and side to side. So, yeah, I think they get broken up. The question is, I think if you're a marketer, and I don't know how many marketers are in this room from a brand or agency perspective, but a lot of their approach, there we go, a couple. From my conversation with them, it's all been about I just want access to YouTube outside of Google umbrella, right? Like, that's the big pain in the ass for these guys. It's like, I get it, Google's been screwing all of us for years. And you guys specifically in this room, I'm not belittling any of that, but the market, if you were in this market, you knew that this is not an equal playing field, and somebody had their finger on the scale the entire time, right? But with the YouTube component of this, that's the frustration, which is you can't, it's a must buy for everybody, so let me buy it the way I want to buy it, maybe directly from you guys, right? Without having something to it.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. So we never talk about cookies at the Boostr Event. We'll leave that for the other event stuff here. But Google didn't kill the cookies. Was that just a head fake to try to get some leverage with the DOJ?
Yeah, so it was more the CMA, which is the regulatory group in Europe, that kind of drove that. And in essence, what they found out was Google eliminated cookies actually hurt all their competitors on the ad tech side. And so eliminating cookies was actually anti-competitive. And so that's what ultimately forced it. Google doesn't give a shit, right? And here's the deal, they're forced to sell Chrome. That's somebody else's problem. And guess what? They don't care about cookies either.
Right.
So the reality of it is we as an industry, need to finally get off of cookies and get over the cookie conversation, right? We have first-party data at scale. that pendulum shifts to the sell side, the power should shift to the sell side. Cookies are like Nielsen. It's like they're fundamentally flawed, but everyone just agreed to it, right? And so let's actually. That was like a good line. So I think let's finally get over it, you know.
Yeah. All right. So continue on the open web kind of browser thread. There's been a lot of news about the trade desk. I think all that's overblown. However, there's a lot of conversation about agents becoming the new interface of the web. What's you guys' hot take on? Is the web as we know it going away, or browsers going away, or will we be interacting with bots in the near future? Flax?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll give you the dirty answer, which is there's slow-moving data and fast-moving data. Slow-moving data, and again, I don't want to dilute anybody's business in this room, but I don't think the industry needs another lasagna cookie recipe website, right? And like those types of websites are at, that type of the open web, that corner of the open web is 100% at risk for being replaced from an agent or whatever. Just keep in mind that we were also promised that like the audio assistants, right, the early days of the website, those were also going to kill the open web because we were never going to go to the open web anymore. We were just going to ask, which clearly did not pan out in such a way. But I think what we're ignoring is the fast-moving data, right? Like it's one thing to say, what do I make for dinner tonight for a family of 4? It's another thing to say, what's the coolest at this restaurant in Soho for my friends? I'm from Chicago, I think Soho is cool. I don't know. But like, where do I do tonight on a Tuesday night that I get a reservation and pull in information from the real-time apps and utilities that sit on phones and other things. So I think parts of the open web as we know it today are certainly at risk. It's also a consumer, this goes to the obvious thing, it's a consumer adoption thing, right? Like, these things are cool, we're all using them today, we make funny pictures of our friends and our kids and our dogs and Superman, like I get it, right? But like, consumer experience and consumer buying has consistently been, you open up a browser, you type in www.google.com and you put in your words. And so the question here is how quickly can the platforms themselves train us as people to stop doing that? And that's like the weird thing.
Yeah, so two parts of the question. I feel like on the trade desk side, what they've accomplished is nothing short of remarkable, right? They had 33 quarters of beat and raise. I don't care how, like, name another company like that, met expectations, Wall Street expectations, 33 quarters in a row. So that being said, like their stock was priced to perfection, and when your stock is priced to perfection, if you don't deliver perfection, that you get crushed. So they lost more market cap in 1 week than all the other public ad tech companies combined are worth.
Yeah.
Right? So they lost like $25 billion, $30 billion of value. And like, then you have like, Magnite sitting at like $2 billion, and Pomatic sitting at $800 million, and like Viant sitting at $1.1 billion. Like, so like they lost more market cap than all the other companies combined are worth. Right? So that's how remarkable Jeff Green and the traders business is. So like when everyone's kind of like crapping on them, I was like, we should applaud them. I was like, I'm gonna applaud them because I want to be traders. That being said, I do think their future is a little rocky because what the world is moving towards. Content has always been king. Content will continue to be king, and it's about premium content. And the problem is Trade Desk made all their money by being in kind of the open web, programmatic, remnant space, right? So for them to be successful, they have to win in CTV. They have to win in massive markets. And I think in CTV, the principles of the business just don't want to pay 20%, to generate yield. And so I think they're going to have a really hard time maintaining margin. But I also don't want to, diminish what they've accomplished, because they built an incredible business.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of people in this room have depended on them to run their businesses. Well, let's talk about content for a little bit. The LLM vendors have taken a lot of content from people in this room. Without their permission. And part of what they're doing now is we're seeing search traffic referrals are down for a lot of people in this room. AI-based search seems to be pretty nascent but growing. Do you guys think this is the end of Google's reign in search? And how should publishers think about their content in this kind of LLM steals your lunch type world?
I mean, was it yesterday? The days of the week to me just blend together. Maybe yesterday was Apple came out and said it was the first time they saw month-over-month decline on iOS. Yeah. Which then set off, obviously, yesterday's, I think it was yesterday, yeah, the stock moved a little bit. I'm not a search guy. Again, this all depends on consumer adoption and how these platforms are training us to use them to use these LLMs and use these agents and agentic tools to do the things we want. I don't think paid search is being noticed going anywhere anytime soon. But this is a shitty answer.
No. So from my perspective, I think similar to how when Google started organizing the world's information, including a lot of your content, you had to navigate that world to figure out how to advantage your own content, right?
Sure.
I think the same is going to be true in the AI platforms, right? But instead of saying, hey, I'm market to buy a new car, it's like, hey, I'm a family of 4, I live in Tribeca because it's much cooler than Soho, and I want fuel efficiency and I have to park on the street, so I don't want a big car. So now it's, so I think you all, there's going to be like the equivalent of SEO is going to exist for the AI platforms. And I think you all in the room need to figure out how your content will play a role in that, and how. And so I think it's just more of the same. It's just the surface areas are switching and they're becoming more complex. But I also met with a couple of companies who are now doing like the SEO and SEM in ChatGPT and all the other platforms, and they're giving they're going back to, and they're focused on the marketing side, but their number one thing is like you need to create better content for these things to crawl, and you need to start thinking about it differently because it's no longer keywords, it's intent, right? And so it's becoming more intelligent. So I keep going back, content is key, but you're gonna have to not navigate a very complex ecosystem, right? And then figure out how to get your fair share, as opposed to, in the search world, I think Google got the most share. And listen, everyone says, I'm not gonna take advertising, everyone will take advertising.
Yeah.
So Netflix, swore up and down they never take advertising, they take advertising. So, ChatGPT is, OpenAI said we're not gonna take they're gonna take advertising. So we have to figure it out, because at the end of the day, consumers want the content that you guys provide, and they're just gonna navigate to it in different ways, as they always have.
Yeah, but let's talk about a category of the industry that there's a lot of green shoots that are non-ad businesses becoming ad businesses in retail and commerce media. It seems like anybody with eyeballs or data is selling ads. They got, some of us really exclusive attribution to first-party data, and we've heard a few of them are actually looking at acquiring publishers or trying to partner them to be around more endemic content around the kind of things they sell. Any advice for the media companies in the room on how they should think about potentially working with the retail and commerce media companies, and can they coexist and work together better?
Yeah, I mean, this is an area that, unlike search, I spend a lot of time in, right? Like, we work with 7 of the 10 retailers in the space and others who have started businesses a similar way. I think it's important to understand, and this is the basics, which I'm sure most of you guys in this room understand, which is one of the very attractive reasons these businesses have been started to these companies is that they run at such high margin, right? With very little cost of inventory, it's running on their own and operated, et cetera. But we also have to realize that there are only very few e-commerce and retailers who have enough site traffic to fulfill the campaigns as we know it. So they've all tried to expand off-site. When they extend off-site, you have 2 big problems. One, data connectivity and all the fees that are associated with that, with all the hops and dops and cookies to IDs and back and forth. And then 2, just the ROI, ROS problem, right? Which is you're just not going to perform the same way you are. If I'm on Walgreens.com buying toothpaste, that ad's going to look a lot better to you on a performance report than if I see that same ad 10 minutes later on CNN.com, for example. So if you look at the retailers who have done some of these endemic deals and partnerships with Best Buys and CNETs of the world and others, it makes perfect sense, right? Like, it gives you 2 things. One, it gives you a deeper way to do some kind of server-to-server back office integration from a data perspective that can take out some of the hops. 2, you can start to play full funnel a little bit more than you maybe could before with branding all the way through performance. And 3, you start to just, again, build out the value proposition at different price points, which I think in today's market, you can create a more robust tool. I think the days of just like extending an audience from a retailer on the open web is a tough thing to do. There are players who do it and optimize the shit out of those campaigns and see great performance, but I do think what brands go to those retailers for are relationships with the endemics, like many folks in this room.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I'll just add one other thing, which is if you are a brick and mortar retailer, if you're not making a majority of your EBITDA through retail media, you will be dead in the next 5 years. So, which provides an incredible opportunity. If you think about, CVS is a bad example because they're a pharmacy. But you think about like, 7 for Mankind, because those are the only jeans I wear. They're not, like, retail is dead. But they have first party data. They should leverage that first party data. They should become a retail media network, and that will keep their business alive. And I just think there is, retail on average is, 2 to 10%, operating margins. The ad business is 40 to 50% operating margins. And so every single retailer has to become a retail media network, and that's just a great opportunity for all of us.
Yeah, great. It's exciting to see there's some bright spots here. Speaking of things that are dead, Bill, you make a pretty bold recently you said SSPs are going to go away next year.
No. So that's not what I said. That's not what I said. So I was on the Ad Exchanger podcast, and I was like the 1200 guest, but I was also on that same podcast 7 years ago. And as like one of the first guests when they first started it. And 7 years ago, I said SSPs will be dead.
So it's fake news.
But then she reminded me I said that. And meanwhile, we just announced this big deal with Magnite, and so then I'm like, so then I had to be like, so then I had to say oh my God, I was so wrong. This is crazy. We love Magnite, they're great. And I had to save myself. So. Here's the thing that so I was wrong. Seven years ago, I called for the death of SSPs. It was header bidding, why do they exist, right? Now they exist. But what's interesting now is all the SSPs are now doing they're calling it curation. I just think it's they're just creating buy side businesses because why do we need a buy side platform and a sell side platform? Right? The sell side platform can lean and provide some buy side opportunities and cut out 7 to 12 points, right? At the same time, the DSPs are going direct to publishers, right? Trade, which makes sense. Why pay 20% if I can create direct links? So what you're having now is who's going to win this tug of war, right? The SSPs' primary customers are the sell side. DSPs' the primary customers are marketers and their agencies. But they both will end up having the same business. And the weird part is they are also both relying on each other. So while they're competing, they're reliant on their competitor. And so, this at some point this is going to blow up. I also don't think we need, 20 of these guys, right? I think, it almost seems like there's natural duopolies that come out. And the worst thing to be an ad tech is the number 3 guy, right? So, I think the open DSP space, the duopoly is set. It's DV360 and Trade Desk, right? If you're not one of those two, and I love me some Viant, but they're number 3. They're a distant number 3. And so, I think that world is going to start converging. And leaving Google aside, my personal bet is it's going to be Trade Desk and Magnite. And then in 7 years, you can tell me I was wrong. Yeah.
Very little, other than just to make the point, which I think we've all been tired of the word curation as just a thing.
Yeah.
It was hot for a second. I think everybody came to us and said, let me figure out how to do this. And if you break it down, I think Bill said it wisely, right? Of just trying to create a buy-side business largely out of a sell-side capability. But yeah, I think again, as the pendulum swings back and forth, the reason the Trade Desk exists and the reason it exists and is plugged into dozens and dozens of SSPs is because marketers screamed from the high hills that they wanted independent ad tech. They wanted something that that was decoupled from supply. They wanted something that had their best interest in mind because they were going to find most of their inventory off the open web using data, all the things. And the pendulum has really swung the other way, back to content is king, the bigger partnerships and relationship with publishers. Frankly, the bigger publishers in today's world have a better relationship with you and I as consumers than the brands do, so they're coming to them for help. It's a different world. But yeah.
This just popped in my head. You know, because one of the remedies that the government is asking for is like a breakup of CAN, but also a breakup of AdX.
Yeah.
Or an opening of AdX. So if AdX was now owned like an independent company, do we even need DSPs and SSPs? If we could just all connect into AdX?
Are you going to buy AdX?
I would love to. I'm a buyer of AdX. Buyer of AdX. I can't afford it, but.
So speaking of content, I think everybody agreed stream video content is probably some of the most premium valuable stuff in the market. And the transition to streaming has been pretty explosive over the last few years. There's a lot of streamers in the room. What I hear from a lot of people in the market research that I read is, you know, when Amazon came in, they flooded the market, they inventory, a lot of other people, now the CPMs are dropping. It feels like the programmatic started coming after the banner part of the web. Is this trend forever? Is programmatic going to do to CPMs in video what it did to the web?
My answer is no. I think we just need a different composition of demand. And so, you know, at the core of Mediaocean, we've been processing $70 billion of television advertising for 4 decades now. And, you know, and 20 years ago, it was like, yeah, well, that's going to zero. It's like $63 billion this year, right? So it's gone down, like it's gone from 70 billion to 63 billion. And that's just what we process. So, like, the reality is sight, sound, and motion advertising is the most effective form of advertising. And you know, you have marketers, largely like 200 of them that matter, right? And you have, you know, broadcasters, and there's a lot of fragmentation, but you know, but it's not incredibly complex. I would say what we need as an industry is to eliminate more people in the middle, have the principals do business together. And luckily, that's the strategy of Mediaocean. So, and so, you know, we're excited about it. I think, you know, it needs to be a composition of TV demand, not digital programmatic demand.
The only thing I would add there is I think the analogy that I would draw, and again, one man's opinion here, is that on the programmatic display side, one of the reasons that publishers, maybe some in this room would argue that programmatic killed the CPM and all the things, is because the publisher, in a lot of cases, back then did not have a relationship with the consumer. And so it was the buyer who was dictating the audiences they were buying, who were coming in and saying, hey, you've got women 18 to 35 because Blue Kai says you do, and I'm willing to pay this price for them. You can take that or leave that.
A Blue Kai reference.
There you go. Long live Blue Kai. Never worked there. But on the streaming side, I would make the argument again that like the streamers in this room and others, they're the ones with more first-party data and logins and understanding consumer behavior and an audience graph and a content graph. And so if you and they play their cards right, I don't think you see price compression over time. Programmatic opens up new doors for buying, but I think if you hold your ground on price and you can, you know, enrich that impression with some of the data that you have, it changes the game a little bit.
And by the way, we're seeing the upfronts right now, and I'm hearing they're going swimmingly well. So,
yeah. Final hot take.
Sure.
One recommendation: how should people be thinking about using AI at work, Wax?
Okay, so everybody should take a look at their calendar for the last week and just print it out over the weekend and circle the shit that you hated what to do, right? Like, it's notes, it's things like it's writing rescopes for a client, whatever it was, and figure out how to do that. Right, like I think a lot of us in the industry, just personally, like you get distracted by, like again, I make funny images of my kids all the time. It's cool, right? And it's, but focus on the things that actually are going to move the dial. The other last thing, which I got from a friend the other day, which I found fascinating, which is a lot of people have issues writing the prompts to these AI agents. Like, well, I don't know what the fuck to ask. Ask the agent to write the prompt. Write the prompt for me for a detailed set of scope documentation that X, Y, and Z, and it will write it and feed it back in, and you will be stunned. So that's my 2 cents.
So we've been the last couple of days we've been doing integration meetings with Flash Talking and Innovid, we found an AI program where we literally took the entire code base of both Innovid and Flash Hawking and put the entire code base in there as a way for engineers to understand each other's platforms. And so what used to be like a manager's job, or it's like, hey, go sit with this person for the, you now can do through AI agents. It's incredible. And so, and then we had a board meeting, and every single board of directors is sitting there saying, how are you going to leverage AI to eliminate people? And so it was asked of the CTO, and the CTO was like, you guys think that engineers just spend all our time writing code. He's like, it's actually like a small part of our jobs. And so it's like fascinating that yes, the world would become more efficient, but it's about prioritization, it's about efficiency. But like now, it would take months and quarters to learn. We do the same exact thing, we serve ads, right? But we do it differently. And now with AI, we just eliminated months worth of integration, right? Through the use of AI. And so it's not about eliminating people, but it is about gaining efficiency.
Yeah, those are great examples. One quick shameless plug, we're a big believer in principal buying. If you haven't seen our integration with Bill's Prisma system, it allows the principals just automate the whole IO process.
Yep.
People should take more advantage. Talk to your account manager today, learn more. Let's get rid of busy, stupid Excel email work. You're talking about that. Let's thank these guys. Great insight.